So in this video I want to discuss about a potential pet trinity in TBC. As we know, there is a pet trinity in Classic, these three families, the wolves, the cats and the wind serpents. They share these abilities, which is bite plus speed movement increase. They are popular because of these famous abilities, the buff that the wolves apply on the party and themselves, so that makes them they can stay next to the hunter and they don't need to engage with the boss in melee, which sometimes saves their lives. The bosses in Classic are quite deadly for pets, and this is the only pet that can stay next to you and still give you some benefit without dying. Wind serpents are popular because of the nature damage, which ignores armor, and cats because of the big DPS. And we can see that here on the base stats. So the wolves, they don't got any DPS increase. They have +5 armor, which is pretty good and is better than health. We will see there is this rule of thumb where armor is compared as a better stat than health, but doesn't have any DPS. But just the fact that they apply the buff makes them good enough. The wind serpents have 7%, which is pretty much like an owl. It's good, but not as good as the cat. They are very good pets because they have high physical DPS and then a very good spell damage ability that ignores armor. But the cats are one of the most popular, not because of claw, but because of the +10%. Also worth mentioning at the end of the game, once people start to get the Thunder Fury weapon, because this weapon applies a nature resistance debuff on the targets that will empower the lightning breath. So that's why wind serpents are very endgame pets from the moment tank gets this weapon or anyone else in the party or in the raid. Now, TBC. The wolves, they don't get much benefit. They stay pretty much the same, but because of the fact there is this new um, pet skill, which is avoidance. This is basically meant to help pets survive when they engage with bosses, so they don't die so often. But if wolves have low DPS and now they can actually engage with the boss, it kind of defeats the purpose of the wolf. So I would say um, there is no need to have a wolf as much as before. But I just want to give a positive note because in Wrath of the Lich King, the wolves will have this buff applied not for the next physical attack but for 20 seconds. For the hunter only, not for the party, but however 20 seconds apply on yourself. And to be honest, in Classic, hunters also use it for themselves. Basically, they stay in range and they're too far from anyone else. So it's kind of the same thing as the same practice as Classic, but with a 20-second buff, which is huge. Now, um, wind serpents, they are very good. The same reason, because of the nature damage that ignores armor, but also because this is a shaman totem, a new TBC totem which increases the spell damage, and of course they get benefit from it. Now, uh, on top of that, because Lightning Breath has a 50 focus, not mana cost, they get the highest focus demand. So because Bestial Discipline, which applies, sorry, this is not plus 100, this is a plus 100% focus regeneration, and also this marksmanship talent, which applies a 20 plus 20 focus on the pet every time the hunter makes a range crit. That makes this ability huge because it's commonly acknowledged that 30% of range crit, base crit, is acquired by the hunter. This ability is very good because any other pet, even though they might have another focus dam like cats, which combine sometimes claw and bite, that still is not enough to keep up the pace of this regeneration. So lightning breath is the perfect match for this huge amount of regeneration. That's why they are also good, let's say, end game pets when you gather this amount. Now cats. As we can see, cats have also two new partners here. The Ravages, this is a new pet, and the Raptors, which is not new, but because Raptors have Dash included among their abilities, that's why they are now considered. Some people rely on Dash a lot for raids and PvP, and also if we look at the stats, Raptors have plus 3% of armor, whereas cats have, let's say, plus 3% of health compared to the Raptors. But as I said, because there is this rule of thumb, Raptors are, in comparison, better than cats, and effectively cats are ideal if you are a night elf in PvP. So you can, combine Shadow Bell with Prowl. But any other situation, Raptor, even though gives the same DPS, but it's gonna be a bit better just for the rule of thumb that I said before. And using the same rationale, the Ravagers are the best of the three of them because they also have the same 10% of damage increase, DPS increase, but they have the best armor modifier. Even though they have the biggest decrease on the health, but because the same reason, health is not as important as armor, so there is this common agreement that says Ravagers are the best. Now, as we can see here, unlike cats and raptors, Ravagers have Gore, which is very different from Claw. Claw has a constant value in this range of damage. That's rank 9 for both of them at level 70. But Gore has less damage in this range, but it has a chance, 50% of chance to trigger double damage. That's a crit. So many people agree Go is better than Claw on the internet, but nobody gives a number or, as I call it, the dynamics. No, so I decided to take a look at this. Yes, as I said, rule of thumb here. That's why Gores are more important in that sense because of the armor bonus. But many people just acknowledge that Gore is better without um, asking to what extent, how much, in which moment, or how long the combat has to last to make this efficient. So that's why I decided to perform a statistical calculation using Excel again. Again, for the same reason of isolating the ability and just observing the effect of this trigger, I decided to use the average damage, which is between these two values, and then it has a chance, 50% of chance to have a factor of one or two, which is pretty much twice the value. Go, as I said before, like Claw pretty much is an instant cast. It's a focus dump ability, so we consider 1.5 seconds for the global cooldown. And there is this formula I found, which is very useful because we'll randomly produce a value of 1 or 2, which is what we want. 50% of chance to get a 1 or a 2. So now we switch to Excel. Um, so here we see we have on the column C and D Claw. Claw has a constant value of 65.5% because, as we said, we use the average values. Over time, and time increase of 1.5, and that's the addition of the damage. And same for Go, with the difference that I am applying this factor, which is here. This is the formula. And of course, every time I change, the good thing of this formula is that every time I modify the cell, this value will change. So you can actually see many different instances of the ability. So depending on, for instance, if I just even click and then push enter, we can see how the values change randomly. So we take this addition and this addition, we compare it and we make a percentage of Go increase, and we take it to this plot here. So we can see I have established just by personal opinion that a PvP time would be up to 30 seconds. It's not true because we have the arenas and the arenas can last many minutes, and the same as PvP. But just for the sake of having a rough idea. So these values I just write them here just to trigger a change, as we can see here, no? So for instance, just by removing these cells, we saw there is a pretty good value of increase. Here in 1 minute we got a sudden decrease, but again, because this is all about statistics, we realize that if we start just to change cells, no, we get the idea that from 5 minutes onwards, the value changes much less, of course, because statistically we have gathered between well, the beginning up to 1 day. I had initially 1 week, but that was too much data, and the values were already converging here from 5 to 15 minutes onwards. So we can see how there is a pretty solid plus 15% of increase as the time goes by, but in the first half, let's say from 0 to 1 minute, sometimes even 5 minutes, the not only changes, but sometimes it's even negative. However, we can see that in this occasion, for instance, we get two negative values here, and negative values are always in this range. They never happen beyond this threshold, I would say. Sometimes, very rarely, because this is all about statistics, you get a negative value here, but as you can see, the overall behavior is just to get a positive increase. Let's see when happens a negative value here. It's always positive here, for instance. This is one unlucky moment where you get a very big minus 25% for the first 6 seconds, no? And as we said, as time goes by, this stabilizes on 13 to 15%. But if we try again and we continue checking new values, it's gonna normally always be positive at least. Here we have one negative, but then we have a massive increase. Here negative, but in my opinion, the net value of the Go ability is normally positive. So that makes it worth it. Here quite negative, then very positive. So yes, we see that it's very dynamic here, a bit unstable. However, from 1 minute, 5 minutes onwards, it's always pretty much positive and very solid increase. So if we go back to the slide, we see how the conclusions of the plot gives us a first minute or sometimes even 5 minutes, which is a little bit unstable, the DPS improvement of Go versus Claw. However, I would say that that's still worth it. Beyond 1 minute or 5, I would say the DPS improvement stabilizes at, I would say, 13 point something percent. So that's the solid value. And because I know the results for 1 week, that stabilizes at 13%. Now, in terms of gameplay, a raid boss combat would take, I would say, is the scenario where that engages with the longest combat time. So that would provide the most solid, consistent damage improve. So the hunter will be sure that the Go ability will give you a solid plus 13-14% of damage increase. However, when fighting trash mobs in raids or PvP fights, I'm talking short PvP fights, because in an arena, if you have the Ravager on the target for longer than 1 minute, then it's going to be worth it the same way as in a raid boss. But again, as I said, even if it's a short combat, the overall value, I would call it net positive, because it's worth it. It's really worth it. And that's it pretty much. I just wanted to describe the Trinity and the last focus on the statistical analysis for Go, just to give it a certain value. So thank you very much for watching. Until the next one, cheers. Bye bye.